Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking the Riverdale episodes, Mind, Manhunter, and The Man in Black. Now, if you notice that the camera is positioned a little bit differently than it usually is, yeah, I'm doing a little experimenting here tonight just to sort of try something a little different with this video. So please let me know if you notice any notable changes in the video or audio quality. Again, this is just a little experiment. Anyway, oh boy, how utterly fun and crazy were these episodes, especially the Man in Black. Oh man, I'm just so feeling all of this. So I mean, we get some really out there stuff like Joaquin is dead and Archie and Jughead are on the run. It's fantastic. Okay, so let's just kind of get right into it. So, first things first, I gotta say, Fred was really lucky that he had the former sheriff there with him when he found those dead bodies, because that would have been just an absolutely perfect opportunity for Hiram to frame Fred for murdering those kids, and pinning it on, basically throwing Fred in jail. It would be an equally good way of getting rid of him. And remember, Hiram has deliberately tried to murder Fred in the past. He sent Tallboy to try and kill him. So, yeah. Having a former member of law enforcement who probably, had more than a few friends out there, good luck for Fred there. And then, Veronica gets that info on Minetta. And then by the next episode, not only is he basically almost certainly dead, but a body is turned up with its head and its hands missing. That's probably him. And of course, that's a way to make sure that nobody can identify the body correctly via dental records or fingerprints. Now, of course, this would make perfect sense that Hiram would do this because, Minetta is somebody that could easily point the finger at him. It's a little convenient how quickly Hiram was able to dispose of Minetta, but this episode, the Man in Black, shows us that Hiram's reach is actually quite a bit more extensive than I thought. Like I just been wondering, is like seeing Hiram as like a guy who is basically a big fish in a small pond. That pond being Riverdale. If he really had the juice to go back and really be somebody, he would have left Riverdale and gone back to New York. And, he would have probably had the bonus point of being able to separate Veronica from Archie. Why wouldn't he take that if he could? Well, that doesn't change the fact that maybe he can't do that. But now we see that he has at least one other town under his control, and it's flat out stated that it's not the only one. So, okay, he's in control of Riverdale, and he seems to have scooped up control of some boony towns out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's never explicitly stated, but it's heavily implied that Riverdale is set somewhere in upstate New York. And Man in Black says that Archie and Jughead have been traveling for a couple of days since they left Riverdale. Well, you can get pretty far in a couple of days, even if it is on foot. I was just listening to a podcast who was talking about this historical war in France back in medieval times, and it talked about how an army crossed 80 miles in 2 days. Now, granted, that would have been at a forced march, almost certainly, but still, it's Archie and Jughead could definitely be pretty far away from Riverdale if they really wanted to be. And again, Archie and Jughead both know that Hiram wants them dead. Don't forget, I mean, Penny Peabody and the Ghoulies beat Jughead basically almost to death. And Hiram certainly would not mind removing Jughead from the board as well. So, yeah. If they were... it's just impossible to guess how far away they were. I'm actually a little amazed they didn't just flat out run for the border with Canada. But illegally crossing the Canadian border is actually, from what I understand, a good bit more tricky than people tend to imagine. So, and that would have, getting arrested by the Border Patrol would have been would have been bad news. So maybe that was ultimately somewhere down the road. I don't know. But anyway, um, let's just continue talking about Archie and Jughead. The whole thing with okay, Hiram is taking all the men out of these towns, sending them to work building the prison in Riverdale, and then flooding these towns with like his new crappy drug that's basically like I don't know what it is, like low grade meth or something. And I mean, you're seeing kids who look like they're what, junior high school students sitting around playing Griffins and Gargoyles, popping this stuff. I mean, like, holy crap. On the other hand, it is said that Hiram did this to one town and a couple of others. So even if you imagine these towns only have a couple of hundred people, half of them are going to be men. Well, where are the male children? You know, like the ones who were too young to be sent doing this. And really, are you going to send like a bunch of 70-year-old guys to go build a prison? The idea that Hiram is doing all of this garbage for free labor, I mean, it's utterly ridiculous. Why not? And what, are people in Riverdale not going to notice that the people building these places are not people from the area? It's like, who the hell are these guys? Hiram is making all of this infinitely more complex and attention getting than it needs to be. Really, he could just hire local people in Riverdale and then he would be a job provider, which is basically a holy term to certain political people of a certain political philosophy in America. But no, he's basically seems to be of like when the farm lady is talking with him, is like, yeah, your father and brother's debts to me are paid. I mean, it's basically like indentured servitude. But why? I mean, like, really, why bother doing all of this? I mean, it's like Hiram is trying to recreate this sort of like coal mining town nonsense from like the 100 and some years ago, which, okay, in this day and age is believable for a crooked businessman. But still, this is all going to attract way more attention than just hiring guys and paying them to do it normally. And even a for-profit prison is going to attract some degree of attention from the feds. So, sure, I'm sure that Hiram has, government connections. He can find some people he can probably pay off. But as Veronica has pointed out, he's not invincible on that level. She was going to take some of her earlier evidence to the feds. And that seemed to throw Hiram. He's like, okay, I mean, there's a limit to his reach. And if the feds start sniffing around him too deeply, remember, this is a guy that was in prison not that long ago. He's only been out of jail less than 2 years. You gotta imagine there are more than a few feds who would be more than pleased to be able to throw Hiram right back in federal prison. So, yeah. This just makes no sense. I mean, he really seems to be doing this just to be an evil dick. And frankly, that's rather poor writing. And speaking of poor writing, there's that bit where like Hiram goes and he gives Veronica this advice that ultimately does prove helpful to her. And Veronica even says for a minute, like, oh, maybe he's not so bad. She says this about the guy who framed her boyfriend for murder and had him sent to prison where he was, tortured, made to fight in an underground fighting ring, branded. Never mind the fact that, a guy, like, God only knows how many people Hiram has ordered be killed, tried to kill Archie's dad. I mean, like, the idea that Veronica would even say for a moment maybe her father isn't so bad is it's utterly ludicrous. Hang on a second. I don't know where in the world to look with this. Okay, I'm just so you know, I'm trying to do this with my iPad. That's what I'm experimenting with, and where the camera hole is a little out there. Oh wait, no, we're doing this. We need to. Okay, I'll need to experiment with this a little more, definitely. So sorry if my eyes aren't looking at you as much as they perhaps should. Anyway, I do really like that scene where Jughead talks Archie down, because Archie's plan of like, okay, I can get the jump on Hiram and kill him. Well, you've already lost one physical fight to Hiram, Archie. Yes, the element of surprise would be very in your favor, but Jughead points out there's like more of these guys and they have guns. So it's damn good that Archie realized that Jughead was talking sense. Otherwise, they'd both be dead. And I like how one of the thing that really sealed the deal for Archie was Jughead saying like, "Would Veronica ever forgive you?" And that's the one thing. Archie just can't go out there and kill Hiram. He can't. As much as she might be pissed at her dad, as much as she might even flat out hate him and think he's evil, Hiram is still her dad. And this episode, this bit where she goes, maybe he's not so bad. As idiotic as it does sort of show the blind spots that people we love can make manifest in us, and how we can sometimes do some pretty serious mental gymnastics to not have to write people like that off. So yeah, as much as a terrible person as he is, and as all the horrible things he's done to people, if Archie did kill Hiram, yeah, Veronica would have a very hard time ever forgiving him for that. Hiram's a bad guy who, it's pretty hard to make a good case that he deserves to not rot in jail or just flat out. The world would certainly be better off without him. But nonetheless, that's Veronica's dad. Someone who's been a part of her life as long as she's been alive. And that one really redeeming thing about Hiram is that he genuinely loves Veronica. Sure, he sees Veronica as an extension of himself, and that's, part of what fuels his love for her. In a way, it's his own vanity. But it's also just a simple fact that, a man loves his daughter. It can be more than one thing at the same time. Humans are complicated like that. Let's see. Kind of intrigued with the whole thing of like Jughead going to see his mom, who I think is in Cleveland, last we heard of it. And we haven't really seen hide nor hair of his sister Jellybean since season 1, so that's promising to be interesting. These episodes also kind of gave us some nice moments with Kevin and Archie. We don't really get to see these guys bounce off each other too much. And additionally, some nice stuff between Veronica and Reggie. I mean, of course, the actors that are playing them are actually dating in real life, so kind of not a surprise that those two are getting more scenes together. That's just the way the world works. Now, the whole stuff with Betty's investigation and the Gargoyle King's minions, and even the Gargoyle King, like, coming to her house. Like, oh my god, when they found that crazy thing in the bed, that was awesome. And this does seem to heavily imply that the Gargoyle King is probably not FP or Alice. Then again, if either one of them was the Gargoyle King, just having some minion wear the costume while they snuck into the house, that would be a great way to sort of divert suspicion. But I think that they've really gone out of their way to show that as flawed as he is, FP is ultimately a good guy. Having him turn out to be the Gargoyle King just doesn't make sense. All right, last season's big bad was Betty's dad. Having her mom turn out to be the big bad of this season, again, that's just too much. And it kind of feels like there's already a villain floating around for Betty to deal with, probably in the form of Edgar Never Ever, or whatever the hell the dude's name is, who's somebody we still haven't even met. So, no, I don't think that's what's happening there. But the whole situation with Betty being taken to the Sisters of Quiet Mercy and then ultimately basically being mentally broken and turned into a worshiper of the Gargoyle King. Oh my god, that's awesome. Oh, that's great. And they did such a nice job of making, although the one thing with that was, like, one, how in the world did Betty not realize that just dumping that crap in the trash was going to blow up in her face? Toss it down the toilet. And then she just sort of assumes that the whole escape route that Cheryl used to escape from the place, that the sisters would never have done anything about that. That's also ridiculous. I did kind of like the whole bit with Ethel being somewhat villainous. It's kind of a nice change from her previous personality, where she was kind of had this sort of victim mentality, victim situation. And then we see her earlier; she's just completely mentally losing it, and here she's just full on. I'm queen bee in this place, which is, again, she's sort of like evil Veronica, and it's, or she definitely seems to have taken a few pages out of Cheryl's book on that. And has been observed in other stories, is that people who have previously been victims in life often make the worst sort of villains if they ever get any real degree of power. And I mean, of course, there are exceptions to this, but it does show something about human nature that, as much as people might say, like, oh, well, if I had the power to do something about the people that are treating me badly, I would stand up for other people like me. Well, sure, in some cases that would be true, but for a lot of people, it seems that really, if the situation was reversed, they'd switch from being the victims to just the victimizers. Not a pleasant thing to think about, but human nature is what it is. So we're still kind of wondering of the question of, like, well, who is the Gargoyle King? And while theory crafting is not something I'm usually terribly interested in, I have said that, like, my strongest suspect is Hermione. And these episodes, she kind of points out again about how she's not in control. She's a victim. She can't really do anything against Hiram, and that's starting to really seem like doesn't really ring true. And the thing that really makes me think that is that when Betty finds the file with the Sisters of Quiet Mercy, it's talking about her dosage and being requested to be upped on the orders of HL. Well, of course, the first person we're going to think of is Hiram. Hiram, when we even saw him right there visiting the sisters. But Hermione would also have the initials HL. So, think about this. Season 1, bad guy turns out to be Clifford. Season 2, bad guy turns out to be Hal. We've yet to have a mother as the bad guy. Also, interestingly, family, season 1, big bad comes from Cheryl's family. Season 2, big bad comes from Betty's family. Season 3, big bad. Well, so far, and for a lot of season 2, it's been Hiram. But what if it is Hermione? Actually, that would be a little creepy, given that would mean that each time the big bad has been the parent of a female character, which, I mean, I don't think anybody's trying to make any sort of point with that. It does sort of seem a little But at this point, it would be just almost ludicrous for FP or Fred to turn out to be the main bad guy. So, yeah. Anyway, that's just my observations on the whole situation. So, guys, I'm going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, subscribe. And, of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Hoosier Jedi. And also join me on Tumblr at Jedi Reviewer. Until next time, take care and have a good one.